Before we get started with today's episode, I want to let you know about our current Design Her Travel newsletter. It is where we share all of the behind the scenes of the episode, my own personal stories, and travel tips that can help you travel longer for less or create the life of your dreams. It really is a place to connect even more deeply with Design Her Travel, and I would love for you to hop on our weekly newsletter. I won't spam you with daily email, but I will send you one beautiful newsletter a week. So if you are interested, then click the link in the show notes and get started now. I will see you there.
One of the first things that you need to just accept is that you have one life and you can't do everything. If you accept that you only have one life, then you have to prioritize, and you're okay also with not living other lives.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Design Her Travel podcast. I'm your host, Kim Anderson. As an avid traveler, global nomad, and someone who considers themselves a citizen of the world, I want to say welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. My hope in creating this podcast is to inspire you to take the leap of faith and to design the life of your dreams. For me, that includes connecting with like-minded individuals and creating a community of souls living their best lives out in and around the world. Each week, you'll hear stories and conversations from fellow travelers who have figured out how to incorporate travel as a key component in their daily lives. Their stories are beautiful and inspiring, just like you. I can't wait to go on this journey with you. So let's do this. Here we go. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to today's episode of the Design Her Travel podcast. I'm your host, Kim Anderson. I hope you are ready for an amazing episode because today's conversation is one of my favorite to date. Today, I have on the show Tom Turcich. And Tom became the 10th person on record to walk around the entire world. And he not only did it by himself, but he had his four-legged companion, Savannah, to join him along the way. Savannah became the first dog to walk around the world, so they are both title holders in that regard. Tom shares his story in his new book, The World Walk, and it is a beautiful reflection on what it takes to undertake a personal quest. It took Tom over 7 years to walk across 38 countries and 6 continents. He walked over 28,000 kilometers to become the 10th person to walk around the entire world. Tom is a phenomenal storyteller and a motivational speaker, and I think you are going to love his story as much as I do. So without further ado, Tom Turcich. Welcome to the show, Tom. Thank you so much for joining me today on Design Her Travel. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. Since I discovered your story, I immediately went online and ordered your book and just was so excited to learn and read about your adventure. And so before we get into all of that, tell us where you are coming to us from today. Where are you in the world?
So I am in northern Kentucky, of all places. After walking around the world, this is where I ended up. I don't really have any connections here. My family and friends are all in Philadelphia, but my fiance, who I met on the last leg of my walk, she is doing her emergency medicine residency here at University of Cincinnati. So this is where I am for a little while. And we have a nice little, tiny little brick house, historic house. And we're about a block from the river, block from a pedestrian bridge that takes us downtown. Got some nice little coffee shops, some neighborhood bars around us. So it's a nice little neighborhood that we're in.
Very cool. I can imagine you did not have that part of the world on your bingo card after doing this walk.
It's a good spot. I wish I enjoyed bourbon because then it would be really great. But if I like bourbon, then I could really tap into what Kentucky brings to the table.
So to get into your story, people are called to a quest for a myriad of reasons, or something sparks it in life. There's a reason. A quest doesn't just happen. And so why or what sparked your desire to walk around the world?
So my good friend, my childhood friend, when I was 17, passed away. And it was just very formative for me. I'd never been close to someone who died before. And I had thought about death a lot when I was younger. I think everyone does. You're just trying to reconcile it. But it wasn't until my friend Emery died that I really felt its proximity and how arbitrary it was. And so that really rocked sort of the foundation of my worldview. And all of a sudden I realized, oh man, I can go at any time and I need to make the most of life. And eventually I discovered Dead Poet Society, Carpe Diem, Seize the Day. It was really formative for me. It came at sort of the perfect moment in my life where I was looking for answers, and that provided the answer I was looking for. And then I thought about, okay, I only have so much time here. What are the things you want out of life? So I thought about the things I valued. At the time, really, I wanted a life of travel, adventure, and understanding. And those are the three things I identified. And then eventually I just spending hours and hours reading travel blogs and perusing the internet for different ways to Eurorail. What is the best series of capitals to hit? I thought that's what I was going to do in the summer with my cousin. And somehow that led me, this budget travel route led me to Steve Newman and Carl Bushby, these two men who one had walked around the world and another one who was still walking around the world amazingly. And that idea of walking around the world just lodged itself in my head, and it really fulfilled everything I wanted out of life. So then that became this singular aim that fulfilled everything I valued, and that I was able to direct my energy and action towards. And then it was actually 8 years between when I first had the dream of walking around the world and when I took my first step. I went to school, and then I was living at home and paying off loans and working and paying off loans. And then even then I thought, all right, I have enough money to bleed out my savings for 2 years. But I thought I have to begin at some point, or else life is just slowly going to pile on the responsibilities and I'll never be able to begin. So yeah, the day before I turned 26, I walked out my front door, and 7 years later, I walked back to it.
That's amazing. Because we all have a dream, and all dreams require bravery. And we talk a lot about that on the podcast. You have to have the bravery to say yes. But the thing we don't talk about a lot or enough is dreams take commitment. Like, you can't just have a dream. You have to actually take steps to make it happen. And you had 8 years between saying, yes, this is what I want to do, to realizing it really is the thing that you want to do. So how were you able to go to school, graduate, and still say no to that life trajectory that you can sometimes find yourself in?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. And obviously from walking is just essentially like a meditation. And so basically I just meditated on my life for 7 years. So I don't think I would have been able to answer these questions at the time, but now I think I have more clarity into why I was able to do those things and stick to this vision that I had. I think one of the first things that you need to just accept is that you have one life and you can't do everything. I think a lot of people feel like they're pulled in a bunch of different directions, and maybe they dip their toe here, they dip their toe there, which is fine. And life is interesting and varied, and that is worthy in and of itself. But if you have this bigger vision, or if you accept that you only have one life, then you have to prioritize. And you're okay also with not living other lives. But then to do that, you have to really reflect on what are the things that you want out of life. Once you accept that you only have one life, then you're forced to decide, what are the things I want out of it? What are the things I value? And when you can clarify that, then you clarify the things you're okay giving up, basically. And there's always going to be things, it's always going to be difficult to give up certain things because we're human and we want everything. And, one of these sacrifices that I had to make for walking around the world was inherent in that is leaving my family and friends behind for years, which I very connected to and care about a lot. But if I wanted to live this life of travel, adventure, and understanding, that's something I had to accept and embrace. And so, over those 8 years, it was really useful that I knew what I wanted out of life. And then also, I think Today, it's really easy to be impatient, especially today because everything is just instant gratification. And you open your phone and you're seeing everyone's highlights and everyone is doing this. And there's always some friend that you have that is abroad, that is in Paris or Machu Picchu or in Algeria, wherever they are. And you're always seeing everyone else's highlights and you feel like you should be further ahead. But people are very small and things take time and you have to stick to something big. You have to just allow things to take their course and have patience with yourself and really, ideally, just be consistent and just chip away at something over the long term. But it takes having that vision and having those values defined in the first place to be able to do that.
And it's remarkable that you were able to create that vision at such a young age and stay committed to it. You were so clear on your vision. So kudos to you, because people spend a lifetime crafting their vision and then it's much later in life. And then they're like, oh, wait, hold on. And so through those 8 years, what was it like? Did you have support where people were like, you're nuts, dude, this can never happen? Because you were clear on your vision, I would imagine you were clear within yourself, but that doesn't mean the people around you always can support that. So how did you navigate that? And did you have support along the way?
Yeah, I didn't really talk about it that much. And when I was a senior in high school and my idea first came to me, I was in speech and communications class. And this last talk that I gave. And this is the thing I want to do. But then after that, I was glad I put it out in the world because I really felt like, oh man, once I say it, then I can't go back on it. But also then I realized I didn't really want to talk about it until I was actually doing it. And so then I didn't really mention it to all that many people. Maybe there's a few friends that were close with. And I think for my mom and dad, they thought, he's 17 or 20 and then 21. And, you have lots of ideas when you're younger. And it wasn't until we were like a week away from leaving that it really dawned on my mom that I was going to leave and start this walk. And she just kind of couldn't believe it. But no, I mean, everyone was, it's hard to see yourself from the outside. So I don't know, but they always, I felt like, believed that I was going to do this thing. And so, yeah, I always had their support. And then I was also very fortunate to get external support from these people I met when I started putting things together. I was able to get a sponsor before I began from this company who knew Anne-Marie, and they're opening up an international branch, Philadelphia sign. And so I was very fortunate in that way to get that external support. I had a fundraiser basically to help me pay off my loans, and maybe 150 people came and donated and, made the walk really feasible beyond just, I thought, okay, I'm going to bleed out my money kind of thing. There was a lot of support, and it was just a long, gradual road to begin, and a lot of it is just like sticking with it and working 2-3 jobs at a time and just trying to save money and pay off those loans.
I love the commitment. And so let's talk a little bit about the logistics, because when you do some research about, I love the term pedestrian circumnavigators that, Wikipedia uses, there are only 10. So are there parameters that allow you to qualify your walk? Were those the guiding force? Tell us a little bit about the logistics and the parameters that were in place when you started.
Yeah, so it was never really about, and I doubt it is for anyone who walks around the world, it's not really about I need to meet this definition. But if you look up at the parameters, it's ocean to ocean on 4 continents and then covering the circumference of the earth on foot in distance. And I surpassed that, doubled that basically. I think most of the world walkers go well beyond that, and if you're walking around the world, you got to have some other ideas in your head than this is going to be some record that you're going for. You have to have some much deeper draw to be out in the weather every day and pushing over mountains and through the desert and everything else. But for me, the thing, I found these 2 guys, Steve Newman, Carl Bushby, and I basically just merged their routes. I said, okay, I want to hit every continent. And so, I took their routes and sort of merged them together. And then I thought, okay, how do I do this basically with as little bureaucracy, with as little visa trouble as possible? And so then I let that nudge me in my route. And so, for example, in South America, rather than walking the East Coast down Brazil, which I would have needed a visa for, and it's very big, I probably would have needed a visa extension for, I went to the West Coast, to Ecuador and Peru, where I didn't need a visa and I could just walk in. And so that kind of decided my route, basically. But again, really, it was this was just a means to an end. Like walking was what I could afford. It seemed like the best way to really feel. Angela Maxwell, who we were talking about earlier, she talks about really wanting to feel the earth. And it was a similar thing for me. It was like, this seems like the best way to understand the world, and where you see not just the capitals and the tourist places, but you see how people are living day to day. And you just get a better sense of the size of the world, and just seem like the best way to actually grasp what the world is actually like. And so that was much more appealing. That was appealing to me versus, anything to be on any list or to be on any record book is just happenstance kind of thing.
And so what were the emotions going through that you were experiencing the day you left?
It was heaven, because it was this dream that I had been thinking about for 8 years. And so by the time I began it, it was perfection. And in the book, I write that first day I walked on the Schuylkill River Trail, which goes out of Philadelphia. And I camped right next to this trail, next to a sewer treatment plant. And I woke up just as happy as could be. I couldn't, it didn't matter, because I was out there living my dream. So nothing could go wrong.
I love that. And so, reality check on walking, was it harder when you started? Were you like, oh my word, can I actually do that? Because the mental challenge, of course, that's going to be there, but the physical challenge, that's a whole other beast. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, way harder. I had a cart that I pushed around the road. So I ended up having 4 carts total. The first one I had, though, was this big custom metal one that a friend built for me, basically. And I just had so much stuff in there. This thing must have weighed like 120, 130 pounds. It was so heavy. And going up even the smallest hill was an incredible workout. And also you kind of think, I've been an athlete my whole life. I played college tennis. And I thought, okay, like I'll be able to pick this up, no problem. But walking for 6, 8 hours a day is so different than any other physical activity you do. And so I was crazy sore. My legs would cramp all the time. I was losing toenails, getting blisters. At night, I'd have to like drug myself with Advil PM or melatonin just to fall asleep, because my legs were just throbbing in my ears. So it took probably a month to physically adjust to walking more than like an average of 16 miles a day. Later, I got up to where I was doing 24 miles a day consistently. But in the beginning, to do 15 plus a day, it took probably about a month. And I swapped out that massive cart for basically just a jogging stroller, which is much lighter and more nimble. And I threw out about half my things.
I would imagine your preparation on what you think you need versus what you actually need. There's a little bit of discrepancy there.
Big time. Yeah. Once when you're pushing everything, you're thinking about all your thoughts are just, what can I get rid of? What can I get rid of?
Paring it down to life's essentials. And so you did not do this walk on your own. For anyone who knows anything about your story, you had a 4-legged companion. So tell us about finding Savannah, having her join you. How did that come to be?
So Savannah, I met 4 months, a little over 4 months into my walk. I had walked down the US and I stopped in Austin, Texas, where my cousin and her husband were, and to take a few weeks off, hang out with family. But during those months of walking, camping in strange places, and you meet some less than savory people. And so this thought kept popping up that, man, it'd be really nice to have a dog that could listen while I slept, or that would just be by my side and sense things. And so my first day in Austin, I have nothing to do. So I'm going to go walk over to this adoption center, just see, what's there, explore this thought a little bit. I spent maybe 2-3 hours there meeting these dogs, not really connecting with any of them. And I'm about to leave. And I thought, all right, I'm going to take one last lap. And as I'm taking this last lap, they brought out Savannah and her sister, who were just these little puppies that they found on the side of a highway, were taken to a kill shelter and then saved by Austin Pets Alive, the shelter that I was at. And they were both really not in great shape, pretty mangy, pretty beat up. But the idea of getting a puppy, it seemed very insane in a certain way, because it's already so complicated. I'm about to enter Mexico and navigate all this. But when I thought about getting a puppy versus another dog, the puppy would know no other life but a life with me on the road, living this very strange lifestyle, and a great lifestyle for a dog, just walking with your best friend 8 hours a day. So I held her and thought, oh man, I don't know. I'll think about it overnight. And this woman was there beside me. every day would just go to the shelter, I think, just to hang out with the dogs. Because she stopped me and she said, hey, like, if you leave, the puppy's going to be gone. The puppies never last. And so she kind of forced my hand, which I'm very grateful for. I thought, all right, like, let's do it. Let's adopt her. And so I was adopting her. I was filling out her paperwork, and her sister's being adopted right then too. So they were both there for maybe 10 minutes in total time. And I happened to be there. And then, she grew up on the road and she was a beast. Spent every minute of every day together with her, just the best, a great companion to have by my side, always ready to do whatever I wanted to do. If I wanted to walk 8 hours a day, she was hyped for that. And she'd want to play at the end of the day. And if we got to a hotel and needed to rest for a weekend, she's like, all right, I'm down to, lay in this bed and do nothing for a weekend. So we were literally, we spent every minute of every day together, like unless I was going into a grocery store or something. So we were perfectly synced up. By the end, like when we were walking across the US, I could have kept her off leash the whole time. Like we could have been walking on a big road and she would have had her ear brushing my calf for 8 hours. And then as soon as we turned off the big road and I gave her the look, she would run off and go exploring. So she was a pro.
I can only imagine how in sync the two of you were, because you were companions. And so how did having Savannah, did it alter your route at all? Because I know sometimes allowing animals into countries, not everyone does that. So did it change where you walked?
No, it was actually very easy for like 70% of the countries. The only difficult one to get her into was getting her into the EU. She had to get a titer test, which just took like 2 months. We had to just stop back in the US and wait for this blood work and paperwork to be processed. But I never had many island countries on my route. The island countries would be more difficult. You have to have maybe a quarantine or something. But when we were crossing overland, say we were all those little countries in Central America or even in South America, I think maybe like 3 of them asked for her paperwork. Most of them, they're stray dogs walking across the border. They're like, what do we care about one other dog? So when you fly in, you got to have all the paperwork in order. And I always did have the paperwork in order, which is also very easy. It's just generally, the rabies certificate and then a general health certificate, which both very simple. You just walk to a vet right before, get the general health certificate. But yeah, most of the borders really did not care at all.
That's really funny. I hadn't really thought about the fact if you're just walking over, you're not arriving on a plane. And then, so let's talk about what's day-to-day life like when you are walking, because you're spending a lot of time by yourself, a lot of time in solitude, a lot of time, you just have a lot of time. So what was your day-to-day life like? Did you have, I'm going to stop by a certain time? How did you know how much food and water? Like, what was that like? The actual logistics of walking?
It depended where I was at, so say I was in the deserts of Peru and Chile for like 6 months, and that's very different. There's times where I was going 3-4 days between towns. So then I get to town, you really load up on stuff and make sure you have everything you need for that extended period of time. At other times, Europe, Central America, Turkey, where it's a little more densely populated, I barely needed to carry anything with me because I knew there'd always be shops. Maybe I'd pass through 5-6 towns a day, something like that. So it depended, but ideally, the ideal, I have a good place to sleep. I wake up, I break down, maybe I'll have like a granola bar, peanut butter, something like that for a quick breakfast. I pack up, and then ideally, in an hour, this is what I found. If I would walk for an hour, and then if there's a cafe or something where I get a coffee and breakfast, like that was the ideal way to wake up and then have some extended energy. And then I'd probably walk another 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, depend. And then ideally find a place for lunch or a good place to sit at least, walk another 3-4 hours, start looking for a place to camp. Again, depended on where I was, how densely populated it was and what I could get away with at night. If I knew in that country, what are some reliable places to camp, start looking for a place maybe an hour, 2 hours before. In the desert, I would just walk until it was dark, and then I just walk into the desert and, throw out my tarp. So it depended. But yeah, it's a lot of time on your own, listening to a lot of podcasts. And then when I go into the cities or towns, then it's, interacting with people. And that first year I was going nonstop, basically. I was so on fire with this need to prove myself. And it wasn't until maybe a year and a half in, and also I didn't have any money really. And probably a year and a half in when I realized when I was going through the deserts of Peru, and I thought, man, I should like slow down and like see some of these places actually. And then I started almost every weekend off. I would take like one full day off. So a hotel for 2 nights, and there because the hotels were so cheap. And even then though, I was like, I have to walk. What was it? I had to walk 240 kilometers in order to earn the day off. And so that was 6 full days of walking. And then I had earned the day off and I could take a day off. But no, I mean, it was, just walking and eating and listening to yourself and meeting some people along the way.
Yeah. There had to be moments where you're just like, you want to give up. Did you get to those points? And if you did, how did you keep going? So was there ever a time when you're like, I could stop now and be satisfied?
I would say towards the end, I definitely felt more that way where I was like, oh man, I've been out here for 6.5 years or 6 years. And you realize like the more and more you travel, you realize that really nothing changes. And when you first start traveling, it's all very exciting. Everything is new and clothing's different. The food's different. The infrastructure is different. The architecture is different and everything is very exciting. But when you really travel for a long time, you realize, oh, it's just like people everywhere. Everything is the same. It's just people hanging out. And so it kind of gets dull, honestly, after a while. And so towards the end, I definitely had that. But really, like the darkest point I had was after I got sick and I had this really bad, I was having stomach pains and I lost like 45 pounds and eventually recovered after months of being very sick. And I picked up my walking in Europe. And it should have been the most peaceful walking that I had, but I was just miserable because I'd been in pain for 4 months or so, 5 months, really constant just agony all the time with these stomach spasms and throwing up and all sorts of stuff. And so I was just miserable and I had no resilience really. And I kept thinking I'm pushing through the German snow and the French rain and think, man, I could be back with my friends and family, like getting a drink with them or having Sunday dinner with my grandparents. But then when I really played out that life versus the life I was living, it just didn't hold a candle to all the things that the walk was giving me. And again, I think that just comes back to like the first 8 years of the walk is that I knew what I valued. I knew this was the life I wanted to live. And so I was okay, ultimately, even when I really played it out, I was okay sacrificing that other life of comfort because this life was giving me, was fulfilling all these things I really wanted. And even though it was terrible then and I was miserable, I also had learned from walking that, there's times where you'll have a week and nothing happens to you and it's really boring. And then you have another week and every day will be packed with meeting someone and some new food and something else. And so I learned, and I still have this much greater ability to just be patient and let like the ebbs and flows of life kind of come. And so even then I knew, all right, like it's going to be a while, but I'm just gonna like have to wait this out. And so that's eventually I got onto the Camino in Spain and had this community around me for the first time really. And that drew me out, but it took a while.
I love that it sounds like, when you're talking about being in the ebbs and flows, it's really just being present to the moment, like knowing this too shall pass, like this is just part of being human. I think it's really easy for us to forget that it's not always, rainbows and unicorns. The hard times definitely make us part of who we are too. And so you had this vision starting out, and as you're nearing the end of the walk, were you beginning to develop the vision for afterwards? Were you starting, or did you already know what you wanted in your post-walk world?
In part, I always knew I wanted to write a book. So that was very useful when I was journaling. I would keep details of things I knew I would forget but that would be useful in writing the book. So I knew I wanted to do that. And then otherwise, I wasn't really sure how I was going to make a living after the walk. And luckily, right towards the end of the walk, Pinterest reached out to me to speak at this like yearly event that they have. And so I went after the walk and I put together this talk and ended up really enjoying it. And then my speaker agent reached out to me. She heard me on the radio or something like that. And so now I, make my living from being basically a motivational speaker. And It's something that I would have felt very fraudulent about years ago. I was like, what do you have to say? But I lived a very unique life, and there are things that I believe in that will make people's lives better and more effective. And it pays the bills. And so I really enjoy it now. And it was very fortunate that it just sort of fell into place that way. The book was so satisfying to write, and spent whatever, a year and a half or so, 10, 12-hour days poring over this, trying to string together the narrative of my growth. But that doesn't pay the bills. I still haven't even seen a paycheck from it. It was greatly satisfying, but I won't get paid for that for a little while. It's a weird industry in that way. I knew I wanted to write a book, and then was fortunate enough that everything else sort of fell into place. But by the end, though, I just couldn't wait to be with friends and family again, and to be inside and to meet someone, which, I did, luckily, towards the end of the journey. So yeah, it was a very picturesque ending, I would say.
Yeah, you couldn't have written a better ending. I was so amazed at your self-reflection when reading the book, because I think sometimes we can lie to ourselves. Like, we don't really want to know the truth, when it's not so easy to face. I mean, I know I've done that before, where it's like, to get to the actual truth, it's like, oh, you have to kind of look at the ugly parts. And so your self-reflection is just phenomenal. And I can totally see you as a motivational speaker, because you have a beautiful way of really getting to the truth that I don't think everyone has that ability or skill. So I think it's beautiful. I can only imagine how many more people you'll continue to inspire. So let's talk about, you do have a fairy tale ending to the world walk. So tell us a little bit about finding the love of your life.
Yes. So I had kind of been dating this Turkish girl that I met when I was walking Turkey after I got stuck in Azerbaijan. COVID was still happening. Turkey was one of the few large countries that I could walk in still. And so I went to Turkey, and then I ended up stopping in this little town of Kash for a while, and met this Turkish girl. And by then, I think in Azerbaijan, I had stopped, and it was the first real taste of not being out on the road all the time. And so it really started having me think about, emotionally be open to, and mentally think about life after the walk. And so my armor sort of softened. And so then this Turkish girl and we started kind of seeing each other a little bit. But then I was in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, and it sort of came out that, we weren't aligned. I really wanted something, but this wasn't the right fit, kind of thing. And so I landed in the US, and I was going to start this last section of the walk from Seattle back to New Jersey. And after a few weeks walking, I crossed over the Northern Cascades National Forest, and I stopped in this hotel to write for a little bit. And I met Bonnie, who is downstairs right now, and she and I just really hit it off. She's from Alaska. She's a medical school there, and in this random tiny little town doing a family medicine rotation. And she just did everything, she fished, hunts, ride horseback, ride quads, but all that. And it was very interesting, also just very humanistic, very kind person. And I think in my younger years, I would have I think especially in relationships, it's like this paralysis of choice, where I would have maybe waited and said, oh, maybe there's, someone else always, there's, in your mind, there's always something else, someone else, whatever. But I feel like after spending all these years with myself and all this time meditating with myself, essentially, I knew what I valued in someone. And so when we met, I was right away, I was like, oh, she's great. This is the same thing. Like, as a walk, she fulfilled all the things that I valued. And so I was able to, I think, just dive in fully into this relationship. And then she kind of followed me around when I was walking. She met me in Idaho and Montana and Wyoming and Colorado. And it was definitely very picturesque, or very ideal, the way the ending worked out. We're living a great life.
I love it. And I can feel your joy and your love as you tell that. Like, people are listening, they can't see you, but the smile on your face, like, you just emanate love and joy. So I think that, it's a true testament that when you hold the vision of what you want in life, the universe really gets to provide that when you open yourself up to receive it. So, and you mentioned, you have to let your armor down. I love that. So congratulations to both of you. I think it's such a beautiful story. And so we're getting close on time. I could ask you so many questions because it's just phenomenal. What you've done is phenomenal. I think the question I would like to close with is you've learned so many lessons through this. And I think it's probably going to be hard to maybe sum it up, but what's the one greatest thing? Like if you had one big takeaway, like what's the one thing that you know now that you wouldn't have known otherwise?
Okay. Yeah. Well, with that framing, I would say it's that people are really small, and it's a difficult concept to convey because I think we inherently think we aren't, and it's useful to, be driven and to have a vision and to be motivated. But I think in reality, you actually control almost none of your own life. And I wouldn't have started the walk if Anne Marie hadn't died. And who knows what would have happened if Philadelphia Sign didn't sponsor me. But also on top of that, when I was out there, I would meet people all the time who were smarter, kinder, more driven than I was. And yet I was the one with the American passport, with American dollars, passing through their town, and they were working some odd end job or whatever it is, but with hopes and aspirations, but limited by these much greater forces around them. So where I think you can apply this is to just relax. You can do, there's so many layers to this, but I think this lesson from Savannah of like consistency, where I would think we'd have these long days, but I never knew how she was feeling. I'm sure she had stomach aches and muscle pains. I'm sure she was tired at times, but every day she would just do the action and then set the day aside. And so in the ideal world, you have your vision, you have your goal, and you can do the thing. You can work towards it, but not with anxiety, not with this vibrating worry. You can just go and do the thing. And it's going to take however long it takes. You're small, be patient with yourself, with your growth. And then when things don't work out, it's not necessarily your fault. And if things do work out, it's not necessarily because of what you did. It's just, the way life is. And so I think give yourself more grace, give other people more grace, and just relax because you control very little of your own life.
I love that. And the thing I love about it is just let it be. Dream, do, and let it be. Takes so much weight off of our shoulders, especially in this day and age with the internet and comparison. And it seems like everyone's doing amazing things. It's like, take a step back, just let it be.
I'd also say this is I could go on, but when I first started the walk, I thought somewhere deep inside me that I would get to a certain point and I would become something more, something beyond human. And you travel for so long and you spend so much time with yourself. At a certain point, you realize it's just you and you out there, and there is no escape. You will always just be, a limited human being. And so, yeah, I think just being okay with, the ebbs and flows of your emotion and life and everything else that's okay. That's life. That's fine to live that.
Absolutely. And so do you have any big quests, anything that, that's calling you forward at the moment?
I think I'm starting to put together sort of like a self-help book kind of thing, not necessarily self-help, but, more philosophical. These are the things I learned from walking around the world that I think are useful to live. So I'm starting to piece that together, but I have been for the first time ever, really in this limbo where I don't have a very, very specific vision, which has, been fine too, just figuring it out.
Absolutely. And when you let it be, it just appears, right? Brilliant. And so with that wisdom, we can move into the lightning round. And so we have 4 quick questions. And the first one is, what is a travel tip or an inside scoop for your current location?
So I'm in Northern Kentucky, like I said, and I would just say this is funny, but I would say if you're going out to eat, just get a burger because wherever I was, I always try and find what a place does better than anywhere else. And so growing up in the Philadelphia area, we do Italian food really well. And then when I moved out to Seattle to be with Bonnie for a little bit, I was really trying to force Italian food on Seattle. And you realize, they just don't do that well. They have great Asian food. And so then I leaned into Asian food. And for a while, we're trying to figure out what do they do really well. And then we realized we never get a bad burger. I was just very American, Kentucky's very American. So get a burger.
That's great. It is the heartland. It's Can't get any more American than that. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
And question number 2 is, what is a book that has inspired you to live or design this extraordinary life?
Yeah, there's a lot. I love reading. So there's a bunch of them. I would say maybe Into the Wild, honestly. I know that's like very cliche, but it's cliche for a reason because it's a great book. It's a great story. And I think it's interesting to read from my perspective, where I think we entered into our adventures in very different ways, because I think he suffered some abuse and he was really trying to escape society. And I was much more going in the opposite direction, where I wanted to see what it was all about and what it had to offer. So reading it was just interesting to see what, pulls someone to leave and to search for something more. And it's just a great book, and Krakauer is a great writer.
So good. I can devour his books in like no time. They're great.
Oh, yeah.
And let's see, question number 3 is, what is something that you always take with you never leave home without?
Today, I would say I have like this, Savannah passed away this summer, so I got a little necklace to remember her. And so, yeah, that's something. And before that, I had my neighbor, Bob, before I left the walk. He was like 92 or 93, something like that. I used to hang out with him all the time. He's a World War II vet. And he gave me this 1933 track medal. And so I wore that when I was walking all the time. So I just like to have something to, remind, some physical thing to remind me of the good things in my life and the good people in my life.
I was so sorry when I read about Savannah. I can't only imagine what that felt like, losing your companion in life. So I know she gets lots of love from everyone who hears about her story. She lives on not only in you, but through all of us. It's inspiring.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. Question number 4 is, what is on the top of your bucket list for adventures or destinations?
Japan, way up there. Yeah. Dying to go to Japan. I've had a couple friends who went there, said it's amazing. And I just love the idea of like this hyper development, but in a very different culture than my own. And the food looks amazing and the history looks amazing. And it's not car centric, and there's a lot of trains and it's walkable. And so all of that stuff, very appealing to me. So yeah, that's top of the list.
Oh, I can see that. And, I hadn't really considered that aspect. You're in a part of the world where it is car centric. Yes. So that is one thing about America, and especially the middle. It's hard to get around without a car. So
yeah, it's honestly such a disservice to the American people that it's just very regressive. I remember I had $100 car that I got from a friend of a friend. And when you're young and you're just trying to start off and, save money and make something happen in your life, and you have to have a car, and then things go wrong with it, it sets you back so far. So I think it's just very unfair to people to not give them other options to try and get ahead in life. And then it's also, they're loud, and so you have parking lots everywhere. They're ugly. They're dangerous.
Yeah, you're right. And they are very expensive. And I think people would be able to explore the country more if there were other routes to do it. It's like, the country's big, give them options and ways to get around. I'm all for better trains or public transport in one way or another.
Any trains, honestly.
Any trains. I know it's crazy. The whole train system is nuts, or lack thereof, I should say. And so where can people find you or connect with you online?
Yeah, so it's the World Walk on Instagram. You can go back and kind of relive the journey that way. And then tomturcich.com, my name. But you probably search the World Walk and on Google, and that'll pop up. So for speaking engagements or to order the book, you can go to my website, which is all there. And the book is called The World Walk. So that'll probably do it for you if you just search that.
Yeah. And I have to say, I've read it. It's a beautiful read. So everyone should definitely pick up a copy. I'll link it in the show notes and all of that information. So thank you, Tom, for sharing your story. Thank you for being brave enough and committed enough to your dream that now you can share it with all of us. And happy travels. I love Tom's story and am so inspired by what he's done and the way that he shares his adventure. And here are the key takeaways. Number 1, you only have so much time in this one life. So think about, what do you really want to experience? For Tom, it was travel, adventure, and understanding. And so once you know, how do you live those things? Number 2, You only get this one life. You can't do everything. When you know how you want to spend your time, then you're okay with not living all of those other lives. Number 3, dreams require commitment. Have patience and be consistent. You'll get there. Number 4, it doesn't matter if you wake up behind a dumpster next to a sewage plant. If you are living your dreams, that moment can be absolute perfection. Number 5, the more you travel, the more you realize that people are all the same. And number 6, we are all small as humans. Our place of birth and our currency can influence our life as much as our choices. So just remember to take a breath and relax and know that what will happen will happen. The quote that I would like to leave you with today is from one of the world's most amazing adventurers, and it's Ernest Shackleton. When I was looking for quotes to close out this episode, I was thinking about the difference between amazing adventurers like Shackleton and like Tom. Saying yes to massive quests is something that most people just don't do. And I'm always amazed by those who do and those who don't. But what Shackleton said was to be brave cheerily, to be patient with a glad heart, to stand the agonies of thirst with laughter and song, to walk beside death for months and never be sad. That's the spirit that makes courage worth having. I feel like Tom's story really conveys or encompasses so much about that quote. As he talked about, as humans, we're all small. We all have variables in life, seen and unseen, that help shape the trajectory of our lives and who we are. But no matter how much support we get from the outside world or our friends or our family or our passport, we still have to have the courage to say yes. And when you have a clear vision within you and are able to allow the noise to sort of fall away, the most important thing that you can do, and what Tom did so beautifully, was to learn to love each and every moment, to know that even the hard ones pass and the easy ones will come again. And that, my friends, is true courage, to trust and know that it will all be okay. If you enjoyed this episode today, then please share it with a friend. That little act of kindness means a lot and helps more than you know. And if you are feeling extra generous, then please head over to your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Apple or Spotify, and leave a rating and review. That's the best way for other people to discover amazing stories like Tom's. And of course, if you want to share your biggest takeaway, I am always up for hearing from you on Instagram. So hit me up at Design Her Travel. Until next time, my friends. Thank you so much for showing up and listening to this episode. I know that there are so many things in life that you could be doing right now. And so it means a lot to me that you're here. There are so many more episodes coming your way. So if you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to review and follow us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know someone who might like to hear it, please share. Those little acts of kindness mean a lot and help more than you know. I appreciate your time and getting the opportunity to share this moment. I'd love to hear more from you. I'd love to connect, so reach out on social. You can find me on Instagram at Seafaring Wanderer. That's SeafaringWanderer. And then you can join our Facebook group at Design Her Travel Podcast. I would love to connect, hear more from you. Let me know what you'd like to hear more of, places you'd like to hear about, and things you'd like to know how to do when designing your life. So thank you, everyone, and I'll be back soon.